All right, morning, everybody. Happy Friday. For those of you that are celebrating Easter this weekend, I'm excited for you to get to spend time with family. And for those that are not celebrating Easter this weekend, I hope you get some great family time and rest and rejuvenation as we enter to the weekend. Hopefully, this can kick us off in kind of creative mode as we get to start our Fridays off right and start our weekend. So, I am so grateful that you've joined us here for today's webinar. I'm Jeremiah Shaw. I'm the president of Strata Leadership. And I am really excited to introduce Nathan here in a bit. And then somebody else from our team, Wes Martin, who's an organizational psychologist and on staff with Strata. And we are going to talk today about the neuroscience of leadership. So again, thank you for joining us. So grateful you're taking this time to be with us today. I think we've got about 300 registrants for today. So again, we're just honored that people sign up for these and spend time with us because we love nerding out over this, and just this rejuvenates us and energizes us as coaches, and then just as a team. So thanks for entering into this moment with us. I do want to walk through some housekeeping things with Zoom. If you've not used Zoom, which probably you have now, being a year into the last season of our lives as a culture, but if you're on a computer, down below there's a chat box. Please go ahead and enter in, hey, your name and where you're from, maybe who you work for. I know there are people coming from all over the world for this webinar, and that is, again, just honoring and just so exciting for us. So jump on there, enter that in, get familiar with that chat box. We may be utilizing that as well. Again, we're learning. We're all about creating a learning environment, and so a great feature that we like to utilize is the Q&A box. So at the below screen on your right-hand side, it says Q&A. For any questions that might pop up for you that you like us to address, go ahead and enter them in the Q&A and not the chat box. That just helps us stay organized as we make those connect with those questions. There is a chance that we're not going to connect to all the questions, but if you don't get that question answered, feel free to shoot us an email. We're going to provide our contact information at the end of this webinar, and we'd love to hear from you one-on-one, and we'd love to reach out and make sure we've answered that question for you. So I think that's all for housekeeping. I do want to set the stage for us today. We are expert coaches at Strata Leadership. We do a lot of executive coaching, and we love what we do. Because of that, anytime you're an expert, that means you get to shift around that position and put on different lenses. So as we talk about today's topic, I want us to think about, we're all putting on the lens of what is neuroscience, what does the current research and data out there say, and then how do we maximize coaching through that lens? So I'm so excited for you to spend some time with Dr. Nathan Miller as he presents some of the things that he's been finding out there that has really maximized how not only has he coached, but how our coaches are coaching our clients. Hopefully this information is impactful for you, beneficial, and applicable. After Nathan's presentation, Wes Martin and myself are going to jump on, and we're going to really talk about application. Okay, what does this mean? What are some next steps that we can have moving forward? So with further ado, Nathan, if you have not gotten to spend time with him, he is a professor. He is the CEO of Strata Leadership. He is an expert coach. He is a father. And he is, more importantly, a friend. So friend to many people on this webinar, friend to myself. Nathan, I'm really excited to hear what you've got to say, and I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. And it is so good to see so many people from really around the globe as part of this today. When we went through the first months of the pandemic, it was incredibly challenging for companies like Strata Leadership. And we, at that time, realized that we were not the only ones dealing with a lot of complexity and uncertainty and just all of it, the volatility, all the different pieces of it. And so we began hosting webinars really because it wasn't all that clear how everyone was going to make it through. And I'm so glad that we were able to do that and that we are continuing to do that. One thing that I will just say about our company and the people that are part of Strata is that we genuinely care about people, and that we look at the opportunity to help develop leaders as an opportunity to make life better. And so the heart of coaching for us is really, how do you elevate life? How do you make life better at home, at work? How do you help people pursue the life they actually meant to pursue? And so we're going to get into that today and look at some of the neuroscience that is a part of this. But I want to just say at the beginning, this really is about, how do you help other people thrive? And if you care about people, and you want to make a difference in people's lives, being able to help elevate life at work is an incredible place to begin. I began coaching a number of years ago. I've had the opportunity to coach amazing people over that time, and I'm so grateful. Some of the people that I've been able to coach over the years are even on this today, and I'm so grateful to be able to partner with people for their future. And I find that after having done a little over, I guess, 3,000 coaching sessions now, that my love for people and my love for coaching has only grown. And so thank you for being a part of this today. We see a number of people from Canada and Puerto Rico and New York and Illinois and Missouri and Oklahoma and California. Just have a number of great organizations that are a part of this today. I'm going to put on the screen the presentation that I would like to start with today. We're going to do this for just a few minutes. I say a few minutes, probably around 30 minutes or so. And then at the end of this, as we get closer to the end, we're going to have Wes and Jeremiah actually apply what we're talking about in your own life. And so we'll have a practical aspect of this that we will be including here in just a few minutes. And I want to give the overview of what we're trying to do through this presentation. I want you to have a deeper understanding of the key theories that are behind some of the neuroscience of coaching. And then I want you to have that practical application. And when we go through the presentation today, I hope the meaning of the application and why it's so important to make that practical application will be evident. We're going to move fast today. And so I would like to just say that up front. We're going to spend just 2-3 minutes on each concept to get the key idea out there. And then you can use this hopefully to contemplate other things and to go deeper. We're going to define coaching. We're going to look at the Hebbian theory. We're also going to talk about neuroplasticity, resistance to change, system 1 and system 2 thinking, growth and fixed mindsets, intentional change theory, and then character and competency focused coaching. And you think, oh, wow, how are we going to get through all that in the amount of time that we have? And so I do want us to be concise as we are going through this, and want to be able to walk you through this without being rushed, but I do want to move quickly. And so looking at the definition of coaching, we use the definition provided by the International Coaching Federation, which defines coaching as partnering with clients. And I love that idea there. I'm going to partner with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their potential and their personal and professional potential. And I want to just look at this idea that in coaching, the idea of coaching is that you are helping someone else determine how they can maximize their personal and professional potential. It is focusing on them and helping them think through what is the best path forward. Coaching, therefore, if you look at the idea, is not counseling. It is not mentoring. It is not consulting. So when you think about counseling, counseling tends to be past oriented, something that is in the past that's keeping someone from being able to function in the way that they would like to today, and how they can use their worldview in a different way, or find some level of health through counseling. And I think counseling is an incredibly important thing for people to be engaged in as needed and when needed. Matter of fact, I have found that many of the most successful people I've been able to coach will have a therapist, they'll have a coach, they have mentors, and they have consultants. Each of these does a different thing. So I've got this idea of it's not counseling, it's not mentoring. Mentoring is you partnering with someone else who is trying to assist you, perhaps in an area in which they are knowledgeable. Maybe they've been farther down the road than you are. They are mentoring you on a skill set, perhaps on a mindset from a perspective of expertise in that area. But I'm dealing with that present tense. How do I get better at this now? And then we are also not looking at consulting, where someone is telling you what to do. This is what you should do, and they're trying to guide you that way. Coaching is more about how do we help people think about the future and contemplate how best to pursue that future. And so, getting into the ideas, when you think about coaching, and people say, "Do I need coaching? Should I get a coach?" And I like to say, if you're thinking about getting coaching, coaching has changed over the years. It used to be that you would get a coach if something was wrong. I'm struggling at work, and so instead of just letting somebody go, maybe they hire a coach for you. But the idea there is largely developmental, or some type of correction issue that we've got to deal with. And I would say that that has now been reduced to maybe 10, 20% of the time that's spent in coaching. The vast majority of coaching, however, is really focused on people who are focusing on how do I go to the next level? How do I pursue the things I really want to do? And so with coaching, we're focusing on the future almost exclusively, and we're asking two questions. Who do you want to be? And what do you want to be able to do? So we're looking at who and what constantly. Who do you want to be? And what do you want to do? And the reason that the neuroscience of this is so significant is that when people come into coaching, and they're looking at the idea of how do I get from where I am to where I want to be, the challenge they often have is not that they can't find a way to do the thing that they're wanting to do necessarily. It is that they often already have a mental model that they are using that is limiting their ability to imagine themselves being able to do this thing. Let me be more clear. Studies on leadership indicate that about 30% of leadership is genetic. About 70% of leadership is learned. They are competencies that we can learn. Consequently, when we look at these examples of people who have become amazing leaders over time, it wasn't that they just showed up and knew how to do all those things. The studies on this are typically focused on identical twins, people with the same genetic makeup, or at least largely the same genetic makeup, and looking at their lives of how did they get from where they are to being who they are today. Well, that was a learned process of gaining new perspectives, new competencies. And so that's where the neuroscience kicks in of how do I change my mind, my brain. And those two concepts are a little bit different. So looking at the idea, I like to start when I'm describing the whole thing with the Hebbian theory. When many of us were growing up, we were told that the brain was largely formed by the time we were probably in our mid-20s, and that who you were began to crystallize at that point, and that's what you had. Well, there's been a lot of change in that, and one of the things that began to drive that change was the work of Donald Hebb in his book in 1949 called The Organization of Behavior. And what he said really at the core of it was that cells that fire together wire together. That's the summary of a complex thought, but cells that fire together wire together. And this image here at the bottom is something I found helpful, but I have not been able to find who to cite for this. So I will say this up front. I don't know who to give credit for this, and I continue to look for it. But if you look at the initial state of your neurons, and then you look at the stimulus that begins to activate, you have neuron A and then it activates neuron B, and the order of that is actually significant. And so I find that this connection is activated. And then when I'm seeing that firing repeated again and again and again, it does what Donald Hebb would describe as what would become known as the Hebbian theory, which what fires together begins to wire together. And so I learn how to do something and I'm responding to it. I'm responding to it, and it is changing my neural pathway. It is allowing this to be strengthened. And so it goes from that short term memory, and then I do it again. I practice, and I do it again, and I practice some more. And then it goes from the short term memory into the long term memory. This is the way that I do something. A simple example of this that I like to use, I ask people to cross their arms. And so if you would cross your arms right now, you cross your arms, and you'll notice if you choose to do this, that about half of the people who are part of this will put their left over the right. The other would put their right over the left arm. When I asked you to do this, you might have thought, do I really want to do this or not? But you didn't think to yourself, how do I do it? You just thought to yourself, do I want to or not? So when you did that, that's an example of the Hebbian theory. Cross your arms, and you crossed your arms. For me, my left is over my right. Now, the challenge of that is my long term memory. My brain is doing this without me thinking about it because my brain is desperately trying to conserve energy at all times. And so I want to do what's easiest for me to do. And that's what the Hebbian theory begins to focus in on. Now, what's also happening is that as this occurs, this pathway, this Hebbian theory begins to strengthen and strengthen and strengthen the way that I do something to the point that later, even when I'm not actually physically doing the thing, if I will think about it, I can trigger the mirror neuron concept, which means if I will visualize something, it will have a positive impact on my capacity to do something, even if I'm not doing it, simply because the memory is there and it is exercising these muscles. Fascinating studies on that we don't have time to get into, but the thought of this is that when I do something again and again and again, it begins to become something more embedded deeper and deeper in my brain, and maybe even down to the brain stem, you could argue, where I'm not thinking about it consciously, I'm just doing it. So when someone comes to us for coaching, they might be wanting to add a competency or change a competency, but the Hebbian theory is already in play. And for me to be able to assist them, I need to understand that I might have to unlearn something to be able to learn something new, or I need to find a pathway that they already have and apply it to a different thing. Looking at how this plays out. I want to go a little bit farther here. It plays out into the idea of neuroplasticity. So if I'm wanting to change what someone does, I have to challenge what they believe because my actions and beliefs are always connected, even if I'm largely unaware of that. So if I'm looking at neuroplasticity, this is the idea that your brain is not fixed, it is not concrete, it is moldable, it is changing, it is flexible. And this breakthrough in brain science has been what many would call the breakthrough of the last 400 years because it changed how we viewed how to use our brains. So it's the idea that I'm changing as I interact with my environment. My brain is constantly being reorganized to address the needs that are in front of me. So when I'm coaching, I'm looking at neuroplasticity as this is a way for me to help someone pursue the thing that they value most. So the idea of functional plasticity, it's if perhaps I had a type of injury and there's been damage to my brain. Well, that functional plasticity is I'm using one part of my brain versus another now to compensate. The structural plasticity is when the physical structure of my brain changes because of what I'm learning. And watch what happens right now. When I tell you that structural plasticity is the ability to actually change the physical structure of your brain as a result of learning, as I am telling you this, it is changing your brain in real time. I'm taking in an idea, I'm examining it. And if I take in new ideas, it allows my brain to continue to shape and form. That's why people who are doing original thinking and are having to process challenging problems like many leaders are, find that they are feeling that sense of fatigue, especially during the pandemic, that is deeper than they have felt before because the brain is tired, and that plasticity, changing your brain, takes a lot of effort. But I want to be clear on this. People can change the way they think. And when you change the way that someone thinks, it changes the actual structure of the brain itself. Now, at Harvard, they have the Center on the Developing Child, and they began to look at what has to happen for change to occur. And when you are young, because those pathways have not become rigid, I'm able to process and learn at a much higher rate. Because I'm taking everything in, I don't have a lot to compare it with. But as I grow older, if I want to change how I'm doing something, the amount of effort required grows significantly, not because my brain doesn't have the ability to learn new things, but because I'm having to often unlearn something to then learn something else. I'm having to create a new pathway. So when you look at people who are being coached, an executive coach is working someone who is with someone who's 60 or 70. That person is having to having to exert a greater amount of effort to change because they have so much already in their mind. This is not a matter of their age is keeping them from learning new things. It's really a matter of the Hebbian theory kicking in, that those pathways have been set and strengthened and strengthened and strengthened. And if I'm going to change that pathway, I have to expect that I'm going to have more resistance to it. People ask the question, well, how early on in life can you do executive coaching or leadership coaching or something along those lines? And I would say to you that the research is indicating now that freshmen in college, when you are coaching freshmen in college, coaching them to become more effective leaders, that impact is having a measurable, you're seeing a measurable impact from the coaching all the way into the freshman year of college. And I think if we start going farther back, now think about this. Think about helping someone become a more effective leader in their 20s, using those healthier habits all the way through versus having to address that when they're in their 40s or 50s. You see the idea. Now, the reason why it's so challenging to deal with that change is because the brain, which is relatively small, takes up about 2 to 3% of your overall body weight. It takes up to 20% of your energy use per day. So your brain is this amazing thing that is taking up a lot of energy, more than any other organ. And so your brain begins to sort things out so that you don't expend so much energy that you don't have something left in reserve for fight or flight. And so the brain is looking for these routines, these habits, these easy ways to see the world so that your brain can go back into a state of ease. This is described as a dual process, but it's a system one or system two. This idea was very much popularized by Daniel Kahneman in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. He won the Nobel for this type of research. System one, it's automatic, it's quick, no effort, it just happens. System two is the complex computation. So if I'm looking at system one, it looks like this. I can determine that an object is at a greater distance than another. I can localize the sound, the source of a specific sound. I could complete the phrase of the book title, War and. I can display disgust when seeing a gruesome image. I could solve 2 + 2 equals without thinking about it. Now, system two requires effort. Prepare yourself for the start of a sprint. Direct your attention towards the clowns at a circus. Direct your attention towards someone at a loud party. Look at the bottom one here, sustaining a faster than normal walking rate. So about 95% of every day, I'm just using system one. I'm responding to what's happening. I'm impulse response, impulse response, impulse response. System two is when I'm having to think deeply, to not just take things at face value, to process maybe the way that I looked at the world was not the way that I should have been looking at the world. System two is not what your brain wants to do. Continuing on, parking into a tight parking space. You ever notice how you turn off the radio in your car so that you can focus? Because it's a situation that requires your attention. Solving 17 times 24 is not the same as giving me 2 plus 2. 2 plus 2, system one. 17 times 24, system two. I have to stop, but I have to think. I might have to get a piece of paper out. Now, what we do in coaching, and it's not just coaching, but definitely in coaching, we are inviting people into system two. And to do that requires a safe place. It requires the brain to calm itself enough to not resist going into deeper thought and dialogue. So a coach creates a trusting environment in which someone feels safe enough to go deeper into who they want to be and where they want to go. So if you look at cognitive ease, I can create cognitive ease by having a primed idea, by people being in a good mood. Cognitive ease is created by clear display, a repeated experience, back to the Hebbian theory. All of these things create a sense of ease. What do I want? I want to get to ease as quickly as possible. I want what feels familiar, feels true, feels good, and feels effortless. And so I'm wanting that emotion, and I'm willing to just take things at face value to be at ease. It's a lot easier to go through social media and look for what feels familiar, feels true, feels good, feels effortless, even if it's not true. And I want to be clear about this. Someone's level of confidence about the truth is not necessarily related to whether it's true or not. It's the emotion that they are applying to it that makes sense from the perspective that they're using. I can feel confident about something that is wrong because it feels familiar, feels true, feels good, and feels effortless. I'm seeing the question, how do we inspire? System two, we'll get to that in just a second. So I look at the world, I see how it is, and you'll have leaders say this, that's just not the way I'm wired. I'm not wired to be able to stand up in front of a public situation and speak at the keynote, as a keynote at the event. I'm not wired to be able to be more detail oriented. I'm not wired to be patient. I'm not wired. And they'll tell you things like this, and they are giving you a hint that they are dealing with more of a fixed mindset than a growth mindset. Dr. Carol Dweck is the person behind a lot of this. And we have both throughout the day. Every day, we're dealing with both fixed mindset and growth mindset capacities. We're a blend of the two. But watch what happens. Coaching requires a growth mindset. Coaching requires a growth mindset because if I have a fixed mindset, I think I can't change anything anyway. Here's the quote: people believe their basic abilities, like their intelligence or talent, are simply fixed traits. They spend their time documenting their intelligence or talent instead of developing them. They also believe that talent alone creates success without effort. If I have a fixed mindset, I think, well, I just have this ability, you don't. I have this ability and maybe they do as well, but I don't think that I could learn it. I think I either have it or I don't. So things like intelligence or talent, fixed traits, you're born with it, you can't learn it. I hear people talk about a fixed mindset quite a bit right now in terms of character development. They'll say this, you need to hire for character and train for skill because you can't train for character. That's a fixed mindset about character development. The truth is, our character is being shaped throughout our lifetime. And if I have a fixed mindset, I give myself the excuse not to change. versus the growth mindset. Growth mindset, people believe that their basic abilities can be, look at this, developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. This view creates a love of learning and a resilience that is essential for great accomplishment. So, with a growth mindset, when I hit something that I am not good at yet, what it does not provoke me to give up. It provokes me to settle in, to think, well, I wasn't very good at that this time. Let's try it again. What can I learn from this? What can I learn from this? What can I learn from this? And because I look at things that didn't work as a learning opportunity, I start expanding my perspective. I begin to expand my capacity. With a fixed mindset, I run into a problem and I think to myself, that's just not my thing. Don't have a math brain, don't have an artist's brain, don't have a leader's brain. What is that saying? Well, that person has decided at some point in their life that they are not this, even if what they believe is not true, or it's no longer true. So let's go into the concept of how to address both of these things, system one, system two, fixed mindset, growth mindset. I don't want to get into this for our time, and it's a repeat of what I just said. A book I would recommend to you on the next concept, which starts to bring all this together, is Helping People Change by Richard Boyatzis, Melvin Smith, and Ellen Van Oosting. But most of it's from Dr. Richard Boyatzis. Dr. Boyatzis created the intentional change theory, or at least began to notice how it works. And Dr. Boyatzis is uh, one of those scientists and people that I just really have a great appreciation for, because he's been at the forefront of these concepts for a long time. He teaches at Case Western. Now, what Dr. Boyatzis began to notice is that when people are dealing with intentional change, they are approaching change differently. And this gets to the question that is being asked by Sasha, and also the question about system one and system two. It's also what we're going to practice here in just a few minutes. Dr. Boyatzis began to notice in brain scans that people respond differently to change when it is a change that they have in mind, where it's consistent with who they want to be, versus a change that is prompted by, if you don't do this, something bad might happen. Let me give you an example. If I sat down with you and I said, here's the situation. We just looked through your blood samples, and we just went through your physical. We went through all these things, and here's the thing: you're going to need to lose about 30 pounds, because if you don't, I'm afraid you're going to have a heart attack. So if I said to you, you need to lose 30 pounds or you're going to have a heart attack, and if you don't lose that weight, you're going to have a heart attack and you may die. That type of motivator, instigator, prompt lights up the part of the brain called the negative emotional attractor, the NEA. And the negative emotional attractor is helpful for prompting change, but it is not helpful for sustaining it. And so in a situation like that, if the doctor had said this, just got back your tests, and before we go through these, tell me about your health goals. Tell me about the ideal version of you when we talk about your health, your ideal weight, your ideal activity level, your ideal, and help me understand where you're wanting to go. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Goes back to the who and the what. Now, here's the thing. If I'm seeing here in the chat, if someone says, I want to quit smoking, great example. But if I say to you, you should quit smoking because it is negative for your long-term health, and you might agree with that, but that is prompting the negative emotional attractor versus this. If I said, okay, let's talk about your life and who you want to be and the ideal version of you. And you said, the ideal version of me doesn't smoke. The ideal version of me is not dependent upon that. And we start having that discussion. That lights up a very different part of the brain. That lights up the positive emotional attractor, the PEA. So the PEA is the positive emotional attractor. And if I'm coaching towards that, I'm asking someone, Tell me about the ideal version of you a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And I'm understanding where they want to go. And then we are creating a game plan that gets them there, that requires that I go deeper. So tell me how you got here. Tell me about where you are and tell me about where you want to go. I'm trying to focus on the future. And someone says to me, I want to be the kind of leader who gets up and can inspire people. I want to do this, this, and this. If they will tell me the ideal version of them, we are much more likely to see the result. The truth is, if I scare someone into change, that change is not sustainable. But if someone says to me, let me tell you who I want to be, then we can chart a very different course. So, looking at your life, what does that mean? It means that once I can imagine who I want to be, once I can see that ideal version of myself, then I can begin going down that path to making this part of my reality. Question was asked, are there times when having a fixed mindset is actually more beneficial? It tends to be that people find that it's beneficial earlier in life. So if I said, I'm going to get through school and I'm going to have a 4.0, I'm going to make all A's, that fixed mindset would say, okay, what's the easiest path for me? I'm only going to take the classes that come to me more easily, more naturally. And what will happen is that type of person will go through school and find great success earlier in their career because they are only doing the things that come to them naturally or easily. The problem with that is that they tend to rise like a rocket and then they plateau. Because what they have not learned is how to push themselves to be able to gain new understandings in areas that might not be as easily grasped. So what you'll see is that the person that is having the growth mindset is perhaps less likely to be as successful earlier in their career, but they stop. But they don't plateau, and because they don't have that stopping point, they continue to get better and better and better throughout their time. So you'll see the fixed mindset is often rewarded early in life, but if you'll grow into the growth mindset, it allows us to then be able to continue on when I'm outside of my area of comfort. And that's where the growth occurs. So, here in a moment, we're going to have Wes and Jeremiah take over. We're going to be asking you to consider some of these ideas in your own life. And we want you to apply it right now. And let me tell you why. If we don't start practicing these things, you will not be able to start seeing the change occur in your life. So, what do I need to be doing? Several of you, I loved you were already saying, this is what I want to do. The ideal version of me, I'm going to lose some weight. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to start that. That action alone begins to change your mind. The way it was explained to me by Dr. Boyatzis was, in your mind, there is this box. And in that box are all of these stories that you've used to see the world through. And you take those stories out and you test them against the world. And that box of stories is what you believe about yourself. It's what you believe about other people. It's your mental model. What we're asking is for you to not just assume that what's in that box is everything available. So if you say to me, I've never played the piano, I'm 65 years old, I would love to learn how to do that. I just don't think I'm very musical. Well, you just created your own thing here, because if I'm saying I'm not musical and then I haven't done something musical, I'm probably going to prove myself right. But if you're asking me, can I learn things like that? Could I learn another language at 70 or 80? The answer is yes. But the reality is it will take more effort. But if I have a growth mindset, I'm willing to apply the effort, because every step I'm making towards my goal, I'm gaining momentum. I'm creating a new a new way of thinking. Now, through that process, I'm so passionate about coaching because I've seen the changes that occur in people's minds when they have enough time to stop, to think, to dream, and then to have someone in their life, whether it's a professional coach or maybe a group of friends and family, that are then supporting the different efforts they're making to pursue that life. But there's a day in everyone's life, I would hope, that they come to the realization that they are the CEO of their lives. There's only one person who can change your life, and it's you. So if you're looking at your life and you say, I want a different outcome, here's the good news: it is possible. You are not trapped, you are not stuck. You are in an opportunity right now to say to yourself, who do I want to be? My grandfather lived to be an old man, but his brain was always young. I was going through some of his things the other day, and I found a piece of paper that he'd written on. It was his 88th birthday. And he had been writing on there, what should the goals be for an 88-year-old? And he had listed down there the things that he was trying to learn and grow in. And I look at that man and I think to myself, why is it that there are some people, as they grow older, they seem to close down? And there are other people, as they grow older, they seem to be squeezing every bit of life out of every day. It's a mindset and it's a choice. I'm going to pass this over to Wes and to Jeremiah. This, to me, this pass handoff right here is not the end of the webinar. In my mind, this is the beginning of the webinar. So if you will give us just a few minutes, here's my actual belief. I believe that if you want to see your life changed right now, today, that you can begin that process right now. The decision to change can be made instantaneously. The reality is, it's going to take me some time practicing a new way of thinking for it to become my reality. But what if in the next 15, 18 minutes, you reclaimed a significant part of your life? Who would you like to be? What would you like to be able to do? All of this is wrapped up in this idea of, tell me about the person you'd like to be. Tell me about your ideal self. I'm going to pass it over to Wes and Jeremiah. I'll stop sharing my screen now and let them respond to some of this more directly.
Nathan, thanks for that great presentation. So much information there. And I'm already seeing in the chat box how powerful it is and applicable it is. So, well, we're going to spend a moment with Wes and myself just diving into, okay, what's next? What's application? I'm going to introduce Wes Martin. Many of you have met him. Some of you have not. And so Wes holds a master's degree from CSU in organizational and industrial psychology. He is one of our coaches here at Strata Leadership. He oversees our coaching team and our training team here at our organization. And he has taught me a lot. He is one of those friends that we get to bounce ideas off of and grow together and enter into that growth mindset that Nathan was just talking about. So he's also a father and a friend. So he's much, much more than just somebody at work. So he's somebody we get to do life with as well. So he is really personal. I think you're really going to enjoy him. So Wes, would you introduce us to the exercise that we're about to walk through?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Jeremiah, for that. So we want to take everything that Nathan said. Hopefully through the first part of this webinar, we've helped you kind of rewire or rethink some of your assumptions about what's possible in your life. And maybe there's areas of your life where you feel stuck or incapable of change. And hopefully you've seen through the neuroscience that we've been able to bring in that you are capable of change. And so we're going to walk you through an exercise really quickly, just 5 questions. Jeremiah and I are going to co-lead this portion. 5 questions to help you begin to make momentum, to start to do some of this work around rewiring those areas of your brain, creating new neural pathways that serve you better and help you live into that ideal version of yourself that you want to be in the future. So the first question that I would like to ask, and just by the way, we have several questions in the Q&A. We may have just a couple of minutes to answer those at the end, but we'll try to answer those. Actually, most of those fit really well into this exercise. So we'll try to answer those as we go. But we're going to walk you through a series of 5 questions. So if you have a pen and a piece of paper, I think it'd be helpful just to write these out. We're also putting these in the chat so you can see them there. And these questions are not foolproof, but they are tapping into some of the concepts around intentional change theory, like evoking transformation, creating a vision, creating a dream, a compelling vision of who you want to be in the future, to create the motivation to enact behaviors over time that create sustained change by rewiring your brain to new neural pathways that help you live into the ideal version of yourself. So the first question, just really simply, is where are you feeling stuck? And that question is really important because oftentimes we don't really even know, or we're not aware of these areas in our life where we even want to make change, because somewhere along the way, whether you were living into a fixed mindset or you began to believe these ideas around this is who I am. I took a personality test when I was 18, and now this is just who I am. I had a T on the Myers-Briggs, and so I'm a thinker, not a feeler. I would love to be a more empathetic person. I would love to be an empathetic leader who is in touch with my emotions, has the ability to serve in a compassionate manner. But I'm just a T on my Myers-Briggs. And so maybe that's an area where you're feeling stuck. We had several chats wanting to lose weight, wanting to smoke. So first, just identifying where are you feeling stuck? And then Jeremiah is going to help us with the second question.
Yeah, those are great, Wes. I love, and then tying it back to what Nathan talked about, the vision and this ideal self and this growth mindset. But question 2 is, what would you like to change? In coaching, this is always a fun question, and usually kind of the first hurdle we face, because all of a sudden, like we were talking about the Hebbian theory and these neural pathways, we fall back into habits. So if you can think of it as a map of a journey, we tend to travel one way. And all of a sudden we say, what would you like to change? And boom, there's a boulder in the road, right? But what's fun about coaching is we get to pull back into creative mode, think about the ideal self, and think through, okay, what do I want to change? And coaching is not about saying, okay, how do we break the boulder and get through it? It's about how do we solve that? It's about critical thinking, because we might need to pull out the machete and create a new pathway. And what Nathan was talking about is that might be hard at first, but the more and more we chop back those vines and create that new pathway, we might end up around the boulder, over the boulder, through the boulder, under the boulder, where originally we were thinking just there was one way. And so I want us to think through that question as we move forward of what would you like to change? And don't panic about it, but step back and think there's opportunity here.
Yeah, totally. Another way to ask that is, what do you want? What do you want? What do you actually want? And we talked about that in the first webinar some. The third question that's really critical is, what would be possible in your life if you were to make this change? And so now we're getting into some of the positive emotional attractor space, where we've identified the current reality where we'd like to make a change. We've created this kind of need, this sense of urgency of, this is an area of my life where I really feel stuck, and this is what I would like to change about that area of my life. So bringing specificity to that, and then dreaming into the future, casting a vision of 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, 1 year down the road. If this were no longer true of me, or if this were no longer a challenge or problem that I'm facing, what would be possible in my life? And a really useful way to do this is to sit and do a visualization exercise of literally let yourself go there and visualize, what does that look like? If I'm no longer, we had a chat in there of, I want to quit smoking. I just can't quit smoking. And certainly there are some addiction and neurological components to that can be helped out by a medical doctor as well. But bringing a coach into that as well, to have the conversation about a year down the road, 6 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, at the end of your life, if you quit smoking today, what does that mean about what's possible for your future that doesn't feel possible to you now? And so really evoking that positive space of transformation There's a company, and I'm not affiliated with them, I'm not receiving any commission on this, but the Noom app, Noom, have revolutionized the health and fitness industry. And what they do is they do an intake form. So when you sign up for the Noom app, it's a health and coaching journey. It has food tracking. They actually assign you a coach that checks in with you every once in a while via text. But what's so powerful about their method of helping you lose weight and make change in that area of your life is they take you through a dreaming exercise at the beginning. So when you're signing up for the app, they say, why do you want to make this change? What becomes possible when you make the change? And I got access to a free subscription, so I went through that process. And as I began thinking about, why do I want to lose weight? Why do I go to the gym? Why do I run? Why do I engage in physical fitness? Why do I not eat the cookie whenever the cookie's right in front of me? The dream or the vision that's pulling me forward is that when I'm a grandfather in my 60s or 70s, and my grandkids ask me to go play outside with them, I want to be able to go do it. I don't want my physical fitness, I don't want those limitations to hold me back from being the type of grandfather that I want to be. So that's the third question. Jeremiah, what's the fourth question?
Yeah, the fourth question is, what is the smallest, simplest step you can take to make this change? I was working with somebody the other day, and we were talking about a big vision. And that big vision was so exciting. I said, well, what might be the next step in that? And it was actually a great metaphor came about, and it was this idea of a backpacking trip. And I want to end up here. And she was so excited to end up here. But then we got to bring that back to, okay, what's the next step? She said, well, I should probably get my backpack out and start laying out my gear. And while that might have sounded like a big task to start organizing, the excitement was there because she had the vision in mind. And she started putting her boots here and her socks there and her food here, all because of the vision, not because of the task, but the vision. So as we coach ourselves and coach others and enter into coaching, keeping that vision in mind is so important, because then we get to work backwards on this map of, okay, where are we at? What's the next step into creating that new path?
Yeah. And for a long time, so if we look practically at Hebbian theory and rewiring our brain to form new neural pathways, so what Nathan was talking about earlier with the idea of system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking, your brain has to biologically spend most of its time in system 1. You cannot live all of your life in system 2. That's why this idea of willpower is, it fails you so often, because your brain utilizes so much energy that it needs to operate in the space of kind of automatically creating new pathways to enter into new habits. And so habit researchers have for a long time debated how long does it take to form a new habit. And initially they came up with this window of kind of 40 days. So if you do something consistently for 40 days, then the new behavior will become a habit that your brain will have rewired to automatically prompt you. When you wake up in the morning, you make your bed. When you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth. But there's recent research has found that that's not actually entirely accurate. It can be as short as 3 to 4 days. It all depends on what habit you're trying to form. So looking at the smallest building block that you can take to begin moving towards that desired change is really critical. And the fifth step is, or the fifth question we want you to consider, which is really a two-part question, is what are you committed to doing and by when? So write it down. What's the step that you're going to take and by when? And then the second part of that question, which is the most critical piece, I believe, of this whole exercise, is who is going to hold you accountable. And I want to emphasize that whenever we're choosing who is holding us accountable, one of the reasons why coaching with individual coaching, working with a coach is so powerful is because for your brain to be open to the new possibilities, for your brain to be in this relaxed state where it can consider new possibilities, new ways of thinking, new ways of being, you have to be in a very relaxed environment. You have to feel safe. You have to feel like there's trust, like there's empathy. And so if you look at the intentional change theory by Richard Boyatzis, the intentional change theory, each step points back to this middle piece, which is resonant relationships. So for you to make positive, lasting change in your life, the idea of having resonant relationships, of having somebody who's in your corner, who's extending compassion to you, grace to you, empathy to you, who's saying it's okay if you fail from time to time, That's the kicker that makes all of this possible. So we have several questions in the Q&A, and the most common question that we're getting at this point is, how do you help somebody move from a fixed to a growth mindset? So if you remember the components of a fixed mindset believes I'm incapable of change, I am what I am, I have the cards that I've been dealt, and there's nothing I can do about it. And so that way of thinking in the fixed mindset leads you to avoid risks, not take challenges, fear failure. And so if you bring somebody alongside of you who actually cares about you and has empathy for you and says, Jeremiah, I believe that you can do this. If I'm working with Jeremiah and he wants to make a change, this is, I believe you can do this. And I see this in you. I see that you are capable of this. And I'm championing him in that moment, which is one of the key critical skills of a coach, is to champion their client, to call out things from that client that the client may not see for themselves. And then when we meet in a week, and Jeremiah didn't do the thing that he said he was going to do, or he did it and it did not go anything, it didn't go how he wanted it to go. To be able to come back in that moment to a coach who says, I still believe in you, I still care about you, I'm empathizing with you, and what are we going to do next? And many of us growing up, so a lot of this goes back to the components of having a fixed versus growth mindset, goes back to early childhood and this concept that developmental psychologists talk about in terms of attachment theory. So attachment theory is this idea that as young children, we form strong bonds or close relationships to somebody in our life that makes us feel safe and secure. Oftentimes that's a parent. And attachment theory, whenever you have that strong bond with a parent, that you know that you can venture out and you always have a safe place to come back to where you're going to be greeted with love and acceptance and warmth and empathy and compassion. When you come back to that, then you're more willing to take risks. You're more willing to step out because you have that resonant relationship in the form of a parent. Now, clinical psychologists working with patients who did not form that strong attachment to a parent in youth, they have figured out over time that you can form new attachments even as an adult. And so finding somebody who's supportive of you, who believes in you, who will champion you, who will receive you with warmth, empathy, grace, and compassion, that is the key to helping you get into this parasympathetic nervous state where your brain becomes open to new possibilities and open to the idea of change. And so to move somebody from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset is really critical that they have somebody in their life that they feel like they can fail and that person is still going to believe in them, still care about them, and still champion them. We just have a couple minutes left. Jeremiah, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I think what we do is go ahead and wrap this up. If you have questions that we didn't get to answer, Crystal Garcia, who is actually working behind the scenes to make this whole thing happen for us, she can put in my email address. I'll love to field those questions, and I can loop the others on the team in on that as well. So if we did not answer your questions, please feel free to shoot us an email. I loved what you said and how you answered those questions, Wes. One thing I would say is remember that coaching is really about dreaming of what could be. And that coach gets to say, it's bigger than that. You can go bigger. And they get a challenge and come alongside that person. And so as you look back in the chat and write down those 5 questions we presented, do that on your own. Take a moment every day over this weekend and journal that. Where are you stuck? Where do you want to go? And if we can help with that, we'd love to help with that. That is what coaching is. We get to meet with our clients every other week and pursue those dreams and pursue that ideal self by asking questions and bringing that out of you. You can do this. It's about moving out of survival mode into this creative mode and getting to dream. There's only one you, and I hope you get to figure that out and get to grow into that. So you all are awesome. So grateful that you got to join us today. Nathan, Wes, great work. Thank you. It's just an honor to do life with you all and be on this team. Crystal, we can't see you, but we're waving at you, and I know you're waving to our participants. Thank you so much for working behind the scenes. We do have another webinar coming up. Crystal, if you can drop that registration link in the chat box right now for our participants. We'd encourage you to go ahead and sign up for that. We love doing this. We cannot wait to be with you all. And if you would like a recording of this webinar, that is going to be made available, and we can get that out to you. Again, shoot me an email on this. Love to connect with you on a personal level, one-on-one. We're here for you all. Appreciate you. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
Wes, Nathan.
Thank you all. Thank you, Nathan. Thanks, Jeremiah. Great.
Y'all have a great Easter weekend.